episode 41 of the Progression Health podcast. I'm here with Amanda Kuda. Amanda, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your story?
Yes, thanks, Ross. I am Amanda Kuda. I am a health, lifestyle, spiritual coach for high-achieving women who want to practice elective sobriety. And elective sobriety is choosing to live an alcohol-free life, not because you hit some sort of rock bottom or you have some sort of problem. That's obviously a valid choice and a valid path, but I work with women who have an opportunity in their life and they realize that alcohol is getting in the way and they want to eliminate that obstacle so that they can live up to their full potential.
Very good. Yeah, just the person I want to speak to. So it's my story for, I didn't really talk to a whole lot of people, just my close friends would know, but there's a history of alcoholism in my family. Then I'd say that you could also say there's a history of sobriety, which is cool. So I always was aware of both of those, I guess, ends of the spectrum. And back in Ireland, when you grow up, you make a pledge. So you say, I'm going to, because alcohol is so pervasive in society, right? I don't know if this is in other countries, but you basically make a pledge to say, I guess to God, that you're going to drink at a certain age. I think that's what it was anyway. I should know because I did it. But I was like typical age of 16 and you're about 12 or 13, I think, when you do this. So basically this will give people an idea of like how pervasive alcohol is in society. We have to safeguard against alcohol when you're like 12 years old through the church because it's just everywhere. So anyway, most people in my class at 16, I was like, I'm definitely doing 18, but I might do for life. I was like 50-50. I might do it for life. And then when I said to myself when I'm 18, this is crazy now, actually, I haven't talked about this in a long time.
Wow. This is wild. This is not how we do it in America. So I'm intrigued to hear it.
Well, I would bet that most people in my class at the time don't remember the pledge at all. It wasn't a big deal for them, but just given my family history, it was pretty big for me. So anyway, I went and said 18, start drinking at 18. And I said I was going to, ideally I would stop when I'm 30. And I turned 30 in June this year. And I stopped drinking last year in July. So I was able to follow through my plan, which is pretty crazy because like how often do we make a plan or we have an ambition when we're younger and we don't follow through on it. So yeah, it's interesting how that all worked out. And since I pursued the path of elective sobriety, I like that term you use. Yeah. I've been dying to reach out to people and speak to people about it because I feel like it's such a rare sort of path to take. So yeah, Amanda, what do you think of all of that? Do you think that's a typical path for people who pursue elective sobriety?
Wow, I have never heard of this like rite of passage before. In an American culture, I think that, there probably are some different religious paths that take a pledge of abstinence of some sort, but like choosing an age of which you were going to start drinking consciously, and also an age where you might stop. I've never heard anything like this, Ross. It's like super wild to me. I decided when I started drinking, it was definitely a rite of passage. I noticed that, I grew up in a very small town and I noticed that most of the kids my age had stopped going to sleepovers and doing these like fun, cute little things we used to do to bond. And they'd started going to basement parties and drinking over the weekend. And at first I thought, oh, wow, that's so lowbrow. I'm not going to do that. That's for mean people or mean girls or popular kids. And yet I so wanted to be accepted by all of them. And so what happens at one point, I decide, okay, here's the tipping point. If I want to hang out with everyone and do what the other kids my age are doing, I'm going to start drinking. And when I started, I definitely knew I have a history of alcoholism in my family as well. In fact, I had my stepmom, she's not my stepmom any longer, but my dad's second wife, she was an alcoholic. And I saw her, she was such an intelligent, capable, just wonderful woman, but I saw her slip back into it. And I thought, wow, that's not what I want to do. And so I consciously remember, maybe not making a pledge like you, but thinking I'm never going to let myself be like Andrea, because that was really hard to watch and really disappointing and really scary. And I never let myself get like that. But, it was this decision to drink because I wanted to fit in. And I think that's what a lot of people a lot of the people who I work with, they come to this point where they feel like they're socially awkward.
The Progression Health podcast has teamed up with TRX. So TRX is a bodyweight training piece of equipment that you can hook up anywhere, anytime. And I highly recommend it. I use it in every session with my clients. I use it to warm up and also for stretching. But if you are traveling, which is where I recommend everyone use it, it's hard to get to a gym. It's hard to find the time. But you could literally work out from your hotel room with the TRX and the door attachment that it has, where it doesn't damage the door, but it gives you an effective workout. I also like to add in other things like glute bands and resistance bands. But once you have the TRX, then you can figure all that out. So get yourself 50% off on the TRX home workout equipment with the code Progression Health TRX and boost your workout effectiveness and consistency. Progression Health podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online therapy service which will help you to more effectively manage your mental health. Mental health is very important, and it's something that all of us are realizing now, especially after the pandemic. During the pandemic, for me especially, it was very challenging, and I I reached out to BetterHelp. I tried out a few of their licensed therapists and settled on one for the majority of the pandemic. And I found the help that I received invaluable. And the great thing also is that you can speak to your therapist outside of sessions. If it's not working out, you can switch. Very affordable. It's really easy to use also. And if someone hasn't tried therapy before, but you're kind of, you're curious, I would highly recommend BetterHelp. So what we've done is we've got a sign up link I'll attach in the show notes. And basically you can get a discount to get started and start improving your mental health today. So BetterHelp for better mental health.
Or they want to be like everyone else, or they want to have a tool to help them loosen up. And there's alcohol presented at the perfect time. And as you use this security blanket more and more as a social lubricant or an emotional buffer, it becomes really hard to get rid of the security blanket because you've stunted your growth. You've never learned those skills to actually like get along in society without it. And so a lot of people never come to the point where you are at, where you decide, oh, wow, I'm going to take this thing out of my life, because it's scary for them. They don't know how to get along without it, even if they don't consciously know that's why they are drinking, to like emotionally soothe or socially lubricate. They don't consciously think about that. But I think it's really cool that you did come to that point, even if it was something that was kind of like premeditated in advance. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to think it was premeditated, but I don't really know. Like, I know that a lot of my classmates, I was the absolute exception, but a lot of my classmates would have either already had been drinking at the age of like 13, mm-hmm. or they didn't make the pledge, which that was the common thing, So like I was the kind of the weirdo that just didn't. I was just like too innocent, I would say. I was like, oh, you drink too much and like only bad things happen. But yeah, so basically the journey has been like very interesting. Like there's no like kind of rule book, or I don't think there's a whole lot of books on it, or like people such as yourself. So what are kind of like some of the like challenges pursuing this path that you see in your clients?
I think the biggest one is that we have this narrative in society, and I think this is really across the board, that the only reason that you need to quit drinking is if you have a health problem that dictates you must, or you have an addiction that also suggests that you must do this to save your life and your livelihood. So the first buffer I think that people come up with is this, societal norm that the only people who stop drinking are people who are addicted, or maybe have some sort of religious or health or other sort of higher reason that they need to. And the message that I try to share is that you don't need to have a problem with alcohol for alcohol to be a problem in your life. And if you really think about the ways in which alcohol is holding you back, if there is anything that you are not able to fully achieve, if you are not living your dream, or, you don't feel like you're operating at highest caliber, if you're not physically, mentally feeling on top of your game, then I would urge you to consider, could your relationship with alcohol be holding you back? And if you have even like the tiniest inkling that, oh, maybe so, then it's something that I just like encourage you to be on the cutting edge and realize that you do not have to call yourself an alcoholic, hit rock bottom. If that is your path, absolutely do those things, because I think they're very productive ways to find sobriety, but you don't have to do those things. You do not have to hit rock bottom or take on any label. You can just choose to quit because you want to live a better life. And that's why I did it. And let me tell you, my life has transformed before my very eyes into something that's incredibly miraculous that I could have only hoped for in my wildest dreams. And I know that the baseline for that, the foundation for this life that I live today, is because I quit drinking alcohol. And I was only drinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I say only, like I was heavily drinking. I was definitely binge drinking on the weekends, but I wasn't drinking any different than anyone else around me. I definitely, I wasn't checking the boxes of any of the stereotypes that are out there saying that I had a problem, but it still was holding me back. And, I'd love to know, like, how did you feel that alcohol was affecting your life?
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So, I think it's interesting how what is considered normal, like kind of distorted almost, but how it was affecting my life, because it's hard to know what's, normal for an individual, or how it has affected my life is like, I like to describe it like, I'm just thinking now, there was a lot of unforced error, does that make sense? So it's like a lot of stress, a lot of, so only when I drank, of course, but like a lot of stress, or a lot of like mistakes, or just kind of like maybe missed opportunities, or things done ineffectively that were purely down to my choice to drink alcohol, So like I was actively choosing to like put myself in a position where like, I was at a typical like, a party, and, let's say I was hanging out with friends I hadn't seen in a couple of weeks. So I'm like, right, this is quality time with my friends, looking forward to seeing, this person, that person. And the next day, then I'd kind of be like, like I really get to talk to them about this thing I wanted to, like how's their, hobbies going, how's their relationships, how's, their family, all these kind of things, the meaningful stuff, like we just completely not get discussed, or the quality time wouldn't be there. And then it'd be like, oh, whatever, sure, weren't they drinking as well? It's fine. And it's like, well, I chose chose to drink. Like I chose to like, miss that opportunity in a way. And it actually just got to the point where it just like kept on happening. I was just getting sick of it, like, kind of straw that broke the camel's back. There was no like rock bottom. Like it was, when I look back at like it was actually 10 years that I was drinking. So 18 to 28. And I would say like hands down, like apart from, like tragedy in your life, like, death, natural cause of death, the worst moments of my life, top 10 will say, in those 10-year span, like the vast majority of them related to alcohol. Yeah. And if not like directly attributable to alcohol exacerbated how bad it was. So for example, something bad happened. How bad it was worse because of alcohol, or it lasted longer because alcohol was involved.
Yeah.
And, everyone's experiences can be different. So like maybe, that's not how everybody else experienced it. But for me, it just started being like, this is like so obviously preventable. And I was just, but I kind of had to really make a strong case in my head. It took me 10 years to quit. Like, for some reason I was like, I'll give it a try. Everyone else is doing it. But I think pretty early on, like I'd say about by the age of 21, I was thinking, right, I'm gonna have to stop this,
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like? What was happening that you were like, oh, no, this isn't the thing, that you knew that you had to stop it?
Yeah. So for example, I mentioned off air that I'm a bit of a hypochondriac. I'm like obsessive about my health, being a personal trainer. And let's say, what day are we today? We're Thursday. Let's say Friday night, tomorrow night, I'm going to a party. I'm going to drink. I would be like, right, you get dehydrated when you go drinking. I'm going to have to hydrate beforehand. So like 1 to 3 hours beforehand, I'm going to have to start drinking, like water. So, or if not, I'm going to have to leave out like some fluids for the day after. And then I'm going to have to like cancel everything on the Saturday morning because I'm going to be hungover.
Yeah.
And I would start to like sort of romanticize like, oh, it's going to be so much fun when I'm drunk and I'm with, the lads and we're having the crack. And it's like, but like, how are you going to have a lot of fun when you're less aware and you're less, sort of like able to focus on your friends and like have quality time. I was kind of lying to myself, being like, oh, it's going to be so much better. And it's like, hold on a minute now, like, is your life so bad that you need to like, get a buzz to have fun? And just so many times where I was conflicted. I was like, I'm doing this thing, but my values are completely the opposite,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so my health is just so important to me. It's the number one, and alcohol was taken away from that. And I felt like I had to kind of comply with everybody else. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, it's so funny how we convince ourselves that we need it in those social situations to connect or to have fun or to be more fun. But really it is disconnecting us. It's making it to where, as you notice, like you're not getting to ask those questions that you want to ask. And I have this, this philosophy that's a little edgy, but I really believe that if something is not fun without alcohol, it's probably just not fun, because what alcohol is doing is making our brains dumb and numb, where we're not realizing how maybe dull and repetitive or mundane or difficult some of the situations are that we're in. And we're not having more fun. We're just making ourselves basically stupid so that we don't realize the situations we're in aren't stimulating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, so for example, something I'm kind of realizing now is like after dark, personally for me, not a whole lot like of good happens, I want to be like up, awake and active during the sunlight hours. And when it gets dark, with exceptions, so for example, if some like performer is on or something and it's after dark, that's different. But for the most part, whereas alcohol would keep me up late at night because, you'd have to typically have drinks after hours or whatever. And it's just like, that would be something going against my values. And like, it would just, it kept, the more I drank and the more often I drank, the more I was running into these kind of like barriers to like what I knew to be true to myself and what I valued. Alcohol was running counter to those constantly. Yeah. So we just grind on you actually almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't sit and get clear on what their values and their desires are, because we get so caught up in like keeping up with the hustle and keeping up with what other people are doing. And I mean, this conversation won't resonate with everyone. Here's the deal. I think that there are some people who are meant to just kind of go along and live their life and go with the crowd and do, just kind of run on autopilot, and that's okay. And there are some people who are called to a higher level version of themselves, but usually those people get stuck at some point in the hustle, in the grind, in the mediocrity, in the crowd. And if any little bit of this conversation resonates, I would say that you are someone who is meant to step up and be called up to this higher version of you. And it probably feels intimidating. You probably don't super like the solution we're offering you right now, which is stop drinking and just see what happens. But if there's anything about it that resonates with you, I promise this is something that is like very lucrative for you to consider as a way to optimize your life, step into your best life, attract the life that you're desiring. I mean, I can't say enough about what it's brought into my own life, and any of the people who I've worked with will agree.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I have this expectation where I'm like, my life should be like 9 out of 10 then all the time because I'm sober. I should get rewarded for being sober. So like very rarely, but sometimes it'll happen. And then I'm like, it's not that I would have like in a month, for example, more like 9 out of 10 days, for example, but I'd have less like 3 out of 10 days out. So how bad I can be, because I know when I drank and I was hungover, the hangovers would be torture. Oh my God. That's just the number one thing I would say, like, you know, the hangovers, just to have them out of my life. It's like, good riddance, thank God, or whoever. But like, yeah. So I think some people, you know, maybe they're able to moderate it and they don't get bad hangovers. And some people actually say they don't get bad hangovers. That's fine for them. But I think if someone does get particularly bad hangovers, life is hard enough. We do not need that sort of stress in our lives. And just think of kind of like, you know, that you're talking about like a higher calling, about how more effective you could be for yourself, but also for like, you know, like for example, a big thing as well is, you know, my partner, like I want to be present, sober, and make the most of our time together now that I found her that I can. So it's like, I'm not only impacting myself, but I'm impacting anyone I come into contact with, especially if I was intoxicated, which thankfully I'm not anymore. But yeah, it is a very, it took me a long time to think about it and make a really black and white case in my head about why I was doing it. And I would just encourage people to do that. I think that's probably the first thing to do. What would you have your clients do if they're kind of like ambivalent? You know, what's the kind of the first step to get them to like get clear on like, you know, the values, like you said?
Yeah. You know, I think that asking that question of, it's not, do I have a problem? Would my life actually be better without alcohol in the picture? And is there anything that I desire, that I want to do, that in any way that I want to show up? Is there anything that I want in this life? Be that, like you said, a romantic relationship, a different type of social connection, a shift in their career, an objective in their career, a spiritual connection, any type of abundance, any type of physical or mental health. What do you want your life to look like? And can you honestly say that alcohol is helping you or hurting? Or can you devise, is alcohol helping you or hurting you get there? And, you know, I was kind of sharing with you before we started recording that, you know, my personal path is I had started down this personal development journey, and I really wanted to lean into a spiritual lifestyle, not religious, but just the spiritual connection. And so I'm reading all of these books. My Audible looks like the who's who of Oprah, Super Soul Sunday. I'm like really connecting with these teachers. And part of me like believes I understand intellectually what they're talking about. And I believe it's possible, but I'm doing all these things. Like I'm putting all these practices into place. I'm journaling, I'm meditating, I'm going to therapy, I'm praying, I'm And I added all of these optimal activities to my life. And I still didn't feel like I was achieving this thing that they were talking about. My relationships were still crummy. I hadn't found, you know, the people who I was dating were not, you know, great relationships. My friendships were pretty superficial and surface level. I wasn't feeling abundant. I was overworked and underpaid in my career. I wasn't pursuing my calling. I was just like grinding all the time and not getting anywhere. I was like running on a treadmill and not making any, you know, gaining any distance. And so finally I had to say, you know what, maybe it's not so much about adding to my life. Maybe it's not so much about doing more of these practices, but maybe it's about something that I'm doing that I need to stop doing. And let me tell you what, Ross, I ran that math several times. I'm like, okay, maybe it could be this thing or this thing. And every single time the message was, Amanda, you have something big to do in your life and you cannot do it with alcohol in the picture. And, you know, I shared with you this quote from James Clear. He wrote the best-selling book, Atomic Habits. And he says, the ultimate form of optimization is elimination. There is nothing is more effective than removing the ineffective. And when I was doing that equation, all I could find was that alcohol, my relationship with alcohol, drinking, the time I spent drinking, the time I spent recovering, that was the most ineffective portion of my life. And it had a negative trickle down effect. Like you said, you weren't showing up as sharp. You weren't being able to be present. I was feeling all of those same things. And it was so freaking frustrating because I was doing all the other stuff that people told me was supposed to make my life magnificent and it wasn't working. And so I had to realize that maybe I was doing something to make a roadblock and I was, because once I removed alcohol from the picture, almost instantaneously, things started to fall into place. And yeah, I had to do a lot of catching up, like self-development work and realizing how to navigate the world without alcohol as a buffer. But things got really good, really fast. And again, I wasn't drinking at a problematic level, but I was drinking enough that I wasn't helping myself. And for me, that looks like pursuing now a lifestyle of abstinence, but my life is so good that I hardly think about it. And so, it's really looking at, is this behavior perhaps the thing that is keeping all the other things in your life from clicking? And for me, that was a yes. And that was a hard admission, but I'm glad that I was curious enough and brave enough to kind of go on the cutting edge and do the experiment.
Yeah. And just from looking at your social media links and your websites and stuff, it's like your website, it's clear that like you're doing a lot of work now. So it's like, I don't think you'll be able to do as much as you're doing without having given up alcohol.
No.
Yeah. So I feel as though I'm just thinking back on my own decision to give up alcohol. It's like, it's a big like leap into the unknown, you know? It's like, it's just a fear of the unknown. And I think the biggest one is like socializing. So like, I know even like, for example, going on a date, I would be like, oh, you know, I'll have a drink just to lighten. I kept on coming back to personally the point of like, I want to be present. This is quality time. Like I'm leaving the house and, you know, I might be traveling a distance and I'm investing my time and energy into this social interaction. So I want to get like, you know, as much out of it as I can, and alcohol takes away from that. But yeah, I found it like very refreshing to be sober and just like interact with people, and I can see like who I really connect with and who I actually like generally just, you know, don't connect with. Do you find that kind of that fear of the unknown, and I don't know what you call it, like social anxiety, is that like, are they some of the challenges that people typically face that you work with?
Oh, that's probably, you know, after getting over the hump of, okay, is this an exclusive club for people who have, you know, an addiction or a dependency? After getting over that, you know, milestone and realizing that no, you can just choose this lifestyle, I think the next big fear that comes up is, oh, wow, I'm going to become a social outcast because all of my social, you know, activities are based around this. And it's hard to see another way if you've only been, you kind of have your blinders on, right? You've only been exposed to this way of socializing. And a lot of the people who I work with are what I like to call deep feelers. And you might, you know, identify with some of these words. Maybe you're introverted, maybe you're highly empathic, maybe you are someone who identifies as a highly sensitive person, maybe you're very intuitive. There's just so many ways to describe this person, right? But it results to the fact that maybe you've always found yourself feeling a little bit different, like an outsider from other people. And so alcohol is a tool by which you've used to blend in, to make yourself similar to everyone else. So of course it's going to feel intimidating to go out in social circles without that, that buffer or that thing that's helped you maybe blend in or, you know, help yourself mold yourself into what you think you should be. But the way I like to look at it is you deserve deep connected relationships. You deserve to be in places where people fully support and cheer for your like highest development of self. And that sure as shit wasn't happening for me in my drinking circles. Like my friends were proud of me and they encouraged me, but it wasn't as active as I deserved it to be. And I wasn't going to find those people until let's call it resetting your algorithm, right? Like I'm sure you are on social media and I bet everyone who's listening to this is on social media. You've accumulated an algorithm in your social media. And that means that the app that you're on knows what you like and it's going to keep showing you more of that. It's going to keep affirming your interest. And so the universe does that as well. You have like a cosmic algorithm going on, right? And so if you've affirmed, I like people who drink, these are the social activities I'm a yes for, this is what I'm used to, you're going to keep seeing more and more of that. But if you make a choice to stop drinking and kind of assert your algorithm, you will start noticing and seeing people and opportunities and experiences that didn't exist before. And I know it can seem intimidating because you're kind of going into the unknown, but I promise that once you've kind of like recalibrated this algorithm, you will start to find people, places, and events that don't revolve around alcohol. And it will seem like magic, but it's just those things were there the entire time. You just couldn't see them because you were so zoned in on this other way of living. So I hope that kind of explains, yes, it's scary. And there's all these other experiences available. You just can't see them yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there is ways of living out there that you don't have to use alcohol to enjoy. Yeah. I'm just thinking, just like a couple of weekends ago, I went like snorkeling with a friend and there was no alcohol involved. It couldn't even have...
That would be incredibly dangerous, first of all, right?
And it couldn't have been involved because like we were driving and stuff. So it's like, they are out there. Like, you know, as in there was a time where alcohol wasn't around and there can be a time where, so I'm thinking more like on a practical level now. I'm like, let's say, for example, someone is like, oh yeah, but you know, all of my friends drink. How would I say to them, you know, I've stopped? Like, is there any tips you have for somebody who's like, you know, how do you manage a situation where like a friend says something like, you know, I'll go on, have a drink, or, you know, come on, have a shot. Like, how do you navigate those little kind of micro like challenges?
Yeah. You know, I have entire, you know, methodologies around this. I'm going to give you kind of some basic pointers. The first is to sit in your confidence and know that your truest friends are going to support you and they are not going to make fun of you and try and encourage you. And those that do, it's always about their own discomfort. They don't want you to drink because they want you to have fun. They want you to drink because they don't want to feel weird that you're not drinking. They don't want to feel alone, right? And that doesn't make them bad or wrong or anything. It just makes them human. And if there is, you know, even if your best friends aren't like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited you're not drinking, you have to like kind of toe the line between, are they actively like supportive-ish? Can they be accepting? Or are they really trying to distract me? And you have to, at that point, make a judgment call of, is this a person that I can let into my circle right now? Because the most sacred thing in your life is you achieving the goals that you want. Confidence comes from commitments that you keep to yourself. And if you go back on your commitments just because your friend John or whoever wants you to have a drink and convinces you to have just one, brutally defeating your self-confidence. And maybe John is not the friend for you right now. Maybe he's not the person to hang out with. And if he can't at least just be, someone who's accepting of your decision, it doesn't mean he has to cheerlead for you, but if he's actively detracting from it, then I would really encourage you to rethink who you're spending your time with in the fragile time where you're trying to reassert yourself. But the really important thing is that you have a really simple script, something very easy to say to your friends, which is something as simple as, hey, I'm not drinking right now. Hey, I'm taking 90 days off alcohol. So I wanted to let you know I'm not going to be drinking. And really, you can text your friends that. You don't even have to say it up front. You can just say, I'm taking this time frame off of alcohol, but I'd love to come along, but I'm just not going to be drinking. And really stating that to where you don't get caught off guard, to where there's no negotiable situation where your friends are trying to convince you into it, I think is one of the most important things. And ultimately though, if you need to set some boundaries with yourself and just not hang around certain people or be in certain environments for a while, that's okay. Right. And I don't know if you found, Ross, if you had to like take a break from certain things, or if you were able to, some people can just seamlessly go and really stand their ground, and some people need a break. It's different for every person. So you just have to choose what's best for you.
Yeah. Choose what's best for you. And I think something you're kind of touching on is like to be aware of like why you're doing things, and just have thought a lot about the decision you're making, because it's not an easy decision. And, a lot of people do drink, but I think I definitely have to like rethink certain situations, or like maybe plan a little bit more in advance, and instead of just being like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to go to this event or whatever, it's like, what do I want, or what's important to me, or like, what's likely to happen at the event, and is that like, something I'm comfortable with, or the people who are there and stuff. So just kind of thinking about like what's important to me. So something that I'm thinking of is just you meditate, is that right? Yeah. So kind of just thinking about like your reasoning why, like how important is that, and planning in advance, just kind of, because I think once you're clear on that, then having the confidence to say like no, or this is what I'm doing, becomes a lot easier. Is that true in your experience?
Oh, absolutely. And the crazy thing is though, as you take a step away from alcohol, you start to learn more about what you do want and what you do like, and what's a hell yes for you and what's not. There are so many situations that I was the person who was like, I'm resilient. This is a hard boundary for me. I'm not drinking, but I'm still going to try and go to some of the same things. So we had this like activity list in my friend group. On Friday, we went to this Mexican restaurant, had margaritas. On Saturday, we did this. On Sunday, we did this. And so I decided I can do this. I can say no and still go to these things. And I did. But what I realized is those activities were no longer filling for me. I was not stimulated, and I didn't feel connected in those situations. So I realized if I want to spend time with these people, it has to be in a different setting, because we're on different levels here. And this isn't feeling productive and connective and, uplifting for me. And so what I ultimately found was that, yes, there were special occasions when I would go out to the boozy scene thing, and be present. But I almost always left early, because my tolerance for those events was very low. And better moments for me with my friends were even the brief moments where we would have coffee or work out together, or just do something simple where we got to be in each other's full presence. And I just really reformatted my life to have more of those experiences, because I realized how filling they were and how unfulfilling and unproductive the other ones were.
Yeah, you just make me realize, yes, I forgot. I sort of don't really go to bars a whole lot anymore. So like if I have to, or, if I really want to, I do. But for the most part, I don't just randomly go to a bar, And I kind of forgot about that. Because it's like just not an environment where like I can't really like hear people when I'm trying to talk to them, or the alcohol kind of corrupts the situation where like I can't really like have that quality time with someone, And other options are, like you talked about, like working out with people, or spending time in nature, for example, or just kind of simple things, having a coffee. They've replaced what I used to do. And I found that like a lot more kind of fulfilling, rewarding. And even just like in a practical example. So let's say, I went before and I had a few drinks with a friend who I was catching up with. Afterwards, I'd be hungover, or I would have spent like more money than I would have liked, or, maybe I would have kind of forgot something, or my hopes for like, having a good conversation typically didn't go as planned because like, I would have been drunk because I found it difficult to moderate alcohol. Whereas it's not like I have the most amazing experience now that I'm sober, but like those little challenges are gone now. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about that. I can kind of like rock up to, a cafe or, a hike, and I don't have to like think as much about like, oh, how much is this going to cost because of alcohol, or, what about the hangover the next day? It just simplifies my life a lot. And that's just a really nice change.
Oh, absolutely. It cuts out so much of the drama and the struggle. I don't know if we had started recording when you said this, but you talked about, having, it's not that you have more 10 days, but you have fewer days where you're at a 3. And yeah, you get to be at this like even keel so much more frequently. And more often than not, I am at a higher vibration day. I am closer to a 10. And if I go to a 3, the most brilliant part is I don't sit there and wallow in it. And I did when I was drinking. I would like, and sometimes that was a reason to drink, like, oh, my life is so hard. Something bad happened. And instead, I have the tools now and the emotional resilience to pull myself out of that 3 and at least get myself back to a 5, which is pretty dang good. And I didn't realize how often I was living in those like lower level numbers if you're, gauging your days out of 0 to 10 until I stopped drinking. And I realized, wow, this is how good life could be. I was really like holding myself back and tethering myself to the ground. It a whole different caliber of life that I'm able to live now that alcohol is out of the picture.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a slightly better quality that compounds over time. Yeah. So
I actually want to, you mentioned this 2 times though, and I want to speak to something that you said about it was really hard to moderate, because I guarantee you, I see you out there, listener, who's like, well, yeah, maybe I'll just drink less though. Maybe I'll just moderate, which great. Yes, we would love for you to do that. That's always a healthier option. And there's this really amazing article by a podcaster and a writer named Gretchen Rubin. And the article talks about these 2 different archetypes that exist. And one is moderators and one is abstainers. And moderators naturally moderate well. They do better when they have options and when they can kind of make choices. And they don't tend to go overboard. They don't tend to have like that binge moment. Whereas an abstainer is someone who is much more all or nothing. They, if it's a yes, then there's a really big opportunity to go overboard. But if there's some restriction, they actually find a lot of freedom. So if the decision is to abstain, that actually becomes really easy over time because a no takes it out of their head, right? And even though I wanted to be, and most of us would love to be a moderator, if that's not something that comes naturally to you, you're probably an abstainer. And this goes across the board. This isn't just with alcohol. This is with exercise. If I'm not consistent, then I don't do it. I'm all or nothing. It's with cookies. If you tell me there's a plate of cookies there, you can have one or you can have none. I probably better go with none because once I go over the tipping point, I'm probably going to keep going back for more. And so I found a lot of freedom in embracing this concept and knowing that, hey, if I just choose to abstain, I'm eliminating a whole thought process something I don't have to think of, something I don't have to plan for, something I don't have to try and control, something I don't have to shame myself for if it doesn't go right, something I don't have to recover from. I just gained so many freaking hours and brain cells and minutes back in my day by not even having to think about the decision of alcohol. And so if you're finding yourself like, oh, I want to try and moderate, but it's really hard, I would encourage you to consider, what if you're just an abstainer? How much freedom could be found if you just said, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I do better if I just say no, or if I just set a hard boundary. And I found a ton of freedom in that.
Yeah. I ruminate a lot, I would like to be able to, have a better relationship with like my thought patterns, but, especially with alcohol, it's an extra thing to ruminate over. So basically just to overthink about, brood over. And I'm just thinking back to like just before I stopped drinking, I said to myself, I'm going to go out and I'm trying to moderate. So I was like, I'm going to have max 4 drinks or 1 drink. And even at that, I would still be overthinking it and spending time thinking about, the external, which is like alcohol. And it's like, so now that I've stopped, I still ruminate, but I'm focusing on things related to me, like internally how I'm feeling, or things within my control that have like a better payout, I would say. So like the thinking and the rumination, that side effect, I have a better relationship with my mental health and my thinking.
Yeah, you free up some time
from abstaining, because the moderation was just too difficult to realize. It's not even worth it to moderate for me.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I just have so much more brain space and time that alcohol has become insignificant in my life. And it's not that I'm here to, I do not preach anything. I'm not here to shove sobriety down anyone's throat. This is for people who have like a curiosity. I'm here to have the conversation and be like a permission slip giver and a way shower. And at that same time, there is, I just like really spaced and forgot where I was going with this thought. Can you tell me what you just said right before?
So we were talking about giving permission to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not trying to like shove it down anybody's throat.
Right. It's not about you have to quit drinking forever, but if you quit drinking long enough that you give yourself a chance to really show up in your life, you will probably find that alcohol becomes insignificant. So it's not even a question anymore. And that's a really freaking powerful place to get to, because you now have a competitive edge against everyone. I don't care if it's in your job, in your, if you, in your relationships, whatever. And this is not to like say that you're trying to be better, but you have a competitive edge that cannot be matched. And that will absolutely have a trickle down effect into your relationships, into your work, into your personal, mental, and spiritual health. It is just a place, if you get there, that it's really powerful to say, I don't even think about that anymore. That's not even on my radar. And it's a really hard concept to get to if it's a significant part of your life right now. But I can promise you that it is possible, and it's really, really good when it happens. But this isn't about like, quit drinking forever. I would never say for anyone to make that your goal. Forever is like a bad F word for me, but it's really cool when you get to the point where you've done it so long and you built up some resilience and some tools and your life has started to shift and change. And then you're just like, that's a thing I used to do. I don't think I'm interested in doing that anymore. And yeah, I think that's a really cool place to get to. And I know you're kind of just past the 1 year mark, Ross. So there's, you can make tons of decisions. It doesn't have to be a forever decision for you, if you get to a point where it's insignificant, that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I would say, kind of like you're talking about giving permission. It's kind of like, yes, it is possible, even though like alcohol is like so pervasive in society. Like, it's funny. I see like tequila has just like blown up, and there's like, is it George Clooney or whatever his name is?
Yeah, everybody has an alcohol brand.
Conor McGregor. I see James Harden has one as well. It's just like, what is going on? Like, as in, people just do anything to make a bit of money. But it's like, I would have thought the reason I didn't stop sooner was because I didn't think it was possible, and it is. And like, life does go on, and like, it's not the end of the world if you stop. Yeah, I guess I just hadn't seen it happen, So I think also, I'm not 100% sure, but I think what helped me make a decision was a friend of mine had stopped at the same time. So I think that helped me. Yeah, it is possible. So just one thing I'm thinking of is you're speaking about like not trying to be preachy and stuff like that. And I'm definitely, outwardly I'm not, but in my head, if I know someone has an issue with alcohol and they try, like they're not good with moderating it, like they binge drink, they drink excessively. I find it quite hard to like relate to that person now that I've stopped. Yeah. So do you have any tips on that? Because like, I've had issues with alcohol, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've drank too much. So I'm not better than anybody else. And I know that, but sometimes when you're around somebody who's drinking too much, your worst side gets the better of you sometimes. Yep. And it's not like I would go up to the person and be like, you're a bad person, you shouldn't be drinking. It's nothing like that. It's more just like, maybe I wouldn't go up and talk to them. And I'm like, if I want to talk to somebody, I should talk to them. It shouldn't matter if they drink or not. And I don't want to be stuck in that place. So I guess that's something that I'm kind of challenged with right now. And I wonder, do you have any experience around that? Totally.
Yeah. It's in this place where you're kind of in this, you can't unsee what you know. Yeah. And there's part of you that wants to share that with other people, but some people aren't ready for it. That's the thing. And I truly, I am on a spiritual path, so I can relate this most closely to the path of like Dharma. And everyone has their own dharmic path that they're on in this life. And this isn't like a principle of Dharma, so don't like quote me here, but if you envision it like that, some people are on the dharmic path just to kind of, like I said, go with the crowd, go with the herd, have fun, be carefree. And they might have a problem with alcohol. They might be poor moderators, but it's never going to occur to them to change that relationship. And so I see it would be unproductive for me to go and try and like force feed this concept to them, or to judge them or whatever. I just have to say, okay, you know what? That's their path. And if they so choose to stay on it, that's cool. That's for them. I'm here to as a spiritual person, see them with as much love as possible, and, also temper how much time I spend with them, especially when they're in that state. But then there's this other, group of people who kind of like you didn't think it was possible because you hadn't seen anyone do it. And so now you have stepped into this role where you can be an expansive presence for other people. And I say presence because that's just what it is. It is you showing up and exemplifying how good it can be to live an alcohol-free life. And you can kind of slip it in like a soft sale when you are in conversation, like, oh, I don't drink anymore, or, I feel really great, and really just talking up this lifestyle, but not making it to where it's a, something you're pitching to them all the time, or you're preaching, or you're really, on a soapbox about, because typically with something that's as polarizing as sobriety, that will turn people the other way really quickly. So I think that my job and anyone's job is to just be an example of what's possible. And the people who are curious and have been looking for maybe a reason or a permission slip, you'll feel them lean in. You'll feel them ask a question a little more. You'll see their ears perk up in a different way when you're talking to them. And those are the people who you can really make a difference with. So much more productive to have like a short conversation, a kind conversation with that person than to spend your energy either hanging out with someone who you don't feel like you're on the same level, or trying to change them so that you can feel that you're on the same level. Like both of those are heavy lift activities, right? And I'd much rather spend my time talking to someone who's like a little bit, even just the tiniest bit curious. And that's how I choose to do it. I'll share with anyone what I do because, it is my career as well. So I get in a lot of really weird conversations at dinner parties where it's not just, I don't drink, but I teach people not to drink. And so I've definitely been in this situation that you're describing where you have somebody who's like, a couple sheets to the wind trying to like explain, yeah, that's really interesting. Or they're justifying their relationship with alcohol with me. And I've just really worked hard to come to a place where I'm like, it's cool. No judgment. That's your path. It's not mine. And you're not bad, wrong, or evil. And I don't have to convince you. I'm not trying to persuade you to be another way than what you are right now. But if you have questions, I'm here to talk more.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach to say, if you have any questions, I'm here, but I'm not going to make any attempts. I'm
not going to give like a TED talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause like it is a really heavy lift to try and convince anybody of anything. And it's like, especially tough with alcohol, especially if someone is like, drinking as well at the time. So it's, you're almost wasting your time. But it sounds as though you're talking a lot about like being aware, being mindful. How big is mindfulness and just kind of being aware of like your values when you're trying to make a change like this, or you're considering change like
this? It's huge because my relationship with mindfulness has, as I said, I was trying to be mindful 7 so years ago before I stopped drinking. I thought I was doing it, but it's really hard to be mindful when you're actively engaging frequently in something that tended to be mindless. And so I had to get really clear and get really grounded. And this is what I encourage all my clients to do as well. In how do you want to feel every day? And what can you do to contribute to that positive, good feeling that you're wanting to cultivate? And my ability to be mindful and to be in this place of seeing people with positive energy, of showing up a little more calm, of getting back to a 5 or getting back to a 7 if I'm down at a 3. That's all mindfulness. That's all mindset. That's all deep inner work. And I did not have the capacity to do that work, to even understand what my values were, let alone understand and have the energy to live them out until I got alcohol out of the way. So I think it's extremely important. And it's also a beautiful byproduct of stepping away from kind of a mindless lifestyle.
Yeah, that's making me think of like some of the things I noticed when I stopped. So I always knew that I was like on the more anxious side, and I knew that I would like go through periods of like feeling low. But now that I've stopped drinking, I realize like it's like I can have periods where I'm like anxious or I'm like depressed, and almost like instead of it being something that's like trying to treat with alcohol, medicate with alcohol, it's like now that I'm like sober and I'm more aware, I'm like more able to like deal with a challenge like that. Because, like for example, you mightn't be diagnosed with like depression or anxiety, but like there still might be a certain day or time period you are depressed or you are anxious. And I'm like there's more of me to deal with those things. So do you think that people could become aware more of like their mental health and like, the experience I've had? Is that something that you notice?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And, here's the deal. Alcohol is a depressant. If you have anxiety, if you have depression, it's only literally pouring fuel on the fire. And alcohol changes you on a cellular level. It changes your brain, your cognitive function, and not just in the hours that you're drinking. It does it over time. And so I'm just an armchair expert explaining these things. If you want a really good explanation, Andrew Huberman just put out a podcast with a really, really practical, easy to absorb explanation of how alcohol changes you. And people like to be ignorant to that, right? They like to think it's helping their depression, it's helping their anxiety, or it's helping them in some way, or it's not really doing anything that bad. But this stuff, let me get on my little pedestal. It's poison. It's ethanol. It is changing every single one of your vital organs. If you have anything health-wise, mental-wise, that's not really feeling good for you, you are only exacerbating that problem by adding alcohol into your system because it changes your brain function and it makes it to where your body is playing keep up, get rid of that toxin. And so all of your other vital organs are not functioning optimally, doing the thing they're supposed to do because they're so busy flushing out alcohol. And that's not good. If you're suffering mentally or physically, you want your body's full attention focused on that issue, not focused on flushing out some freaking lighter fluid that you decided to drink over the weekend. And it's just, yeah, you can improve. Not that it's going to cure depression or cure anxiety, but it's going to give you a much more targeted gateway to solve for it if you have alcohol out of the way.
Yeah, it's funny. That was one of the misconceptions I had. I was like, a couple of months into it and I was like, oh, I'm still feeling anxious or I'm still feeling a bit depressed. And it's like, yeah, like now you know that the depression or the anxiety that you go through sometimes, it's not because of the alcohol, it's something else. Mm-hmm. But like, right, that's one thing ruled out. It's not alcohol and you don't have to spend time coming back from a hangover now. So you can actually kind of like with the sober mind, you can apply, all your resources to improving your mental health, which it's kind of quite freeing because it's like, right, that's what the alcohol is one thing that isn't holding me back. So it's got to be something else. Or maybe, mental health challenges are not curable. Maybe I can live with them more effectively now that, I'm sober, which I would definitely say is the case. Like, you mentioned therapy, I go to therapy and I find that you're just more capable and stronger. You're not held back by, being hungover or ruminating about alcohol like I was.
I mean, alcohol for me was like pouring lighter fluid on my anxiety. I, thought that it made me less anxious, but the next day, anytime I was hungover, there's this cute term, hangxiety, like a hangover and anxiety paired together. It's not cute. It is terrifying. And it does not feel good. And I spent a lot of my weekend in that deep anxiety feeling where I just felt like something was unsettled. And I haven't had that feeling in almost 5 years. And anytime I've had actual anxiety, I've known what to do to get through it. And before I had no clue. My body had forgotten those functions, right? I trained myself out of it. And now I'm back on track. And my body I can handle it. And, or if I, was on the medicated path, that medication is only going to work better if you don't have anything else. You're not self-medicating at the same time. So in my mind, it's a win-win if you are hoping to live a more mentally and physically optimized, healthy, stable life.
Yeah, it's funny. In Ireland, we have a term called the fear. So basically, it's like you wake up and you're just like you have that like anxiety, the hungover anxiety, and it's like fear of like the unknown. It's like, oh, I said something that I'm going to regret, or I did something I'm going to regret. You don't know what it is, but it's just anxiety brought on or exacerbated by being hungover. So yeah, it's like a bona fide term back in Ireland.
Oh wow, that's wild. I love that you have a term for it. One of my girlfriends and I called it the sadness, but it's the same thing. But that was like our cute little like, hey, I'm feeling the sadness today. But I'd never discussed it with anyone because we don't, up until recently, there haven't been people talking about this. But it's so cool that in Ireland, like there's this like rite of passage and all these steps, and there's kind of like a nomenclature around it, even if it's maybe still making it like a little cutesy.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, because it's kind of like, what could there be if we didn't have to deal with whatever challenge you're facing, if it wasn't clouded in a hangover? Like, how much more effective could we be? Interesting to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I'll give you a shortcut. You'll be unstoppable. Like you will be operating at a level. Will it be all roses all the time? No, but you'll be more capable of taking on anything life throws at you because you are inherently a capable, intelligent person whose body was made to feel all these emotions. Let me tell you what, I don't care what you believe spiritually, but your body would not have been gifted with the ability to feel emotions if you weren't capable of doing it. And once you master that capability that is like universally given, you're just going to feel really freaking powerful all the time. And that's a really cool way to feel personally.
Yeah, it definitely feels better than having the doubts that alcohol brings.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody, let's say, for example, I was like, moderation is fine, but like I want to improve my relationship with alcohol and I wanted to work with you and I hadn't, maybe like 5 years ago, for example, like what would be like kind of the first steps you would take me through to improve my relationship with alcohol?
Yeah. The very first thing I think is doing a period of elimination. You have to give alcohol the time to clear from your body and you have to give yourself the opportunity to operate without it. And for me, the minimum is 90 days. And that's for a lot of technical reasons. Like we really want alcohol to clear from your system, but we also want to give you different opportunities to have life experiences without alcohol in the picture. And so for me, number one step is non-negotiable 90 days off of alcohol, and then reassess from there. Know that that's not 90 days and then you're ready to go. You can start drinking again. In 90 days, then you reassess. But for me, unless you really take a break from something, if it's always, on a special occasion, or if it's always negotiable, you're never going to get the true benefit of seeing how resilient you are and knowing yourself. And so non-negotiable 90-day break. And I support people with that in a couple different ways through private one-on-one coaching, where we're talking frequently, maybe even daily sometimes, back and forth about just holding you accountable. But I also have courses and there's several different paths depending upon what you feel is most important. But everyone, this is not, even if you're not addicted, this is not an easy path because it's so socially acceptable. It feels really scary, and you have to relearn a lot of skills that you've been neglecting for years. And so having someone there to kind of redirect you and point you down the path is really helpful. And I'm really feel grateful that I'm doing this as my job right now.
Yeah, it's a very, very important job. Because not everybody who is addiction free, is kind of without a potential. So relearning the skills is like a really big thing that, I found, before I started drinking, of course, I was able to socialize without alcohol. So just really relearning that. The knock-on effects can be huge. Like, so for example, I used to smoke like weed, we're here in California. I stopped doing that because I realized that wasn't having a good impact on me. So like it can have downstream benefits in other ways that you wouldn't anticipate. But I think, just in my own case, because I was drinking and not fully aware, I didn't know these potentials. So I think working with someone like yourself would be like really useful for anyone who's ambivalent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any final messages, Amanda, that you want to wrap up with before we finish up, or any links or any courses, anything coming up that you have?
Yeah, I have a course, my foundational course, because it's everything that I do is rooted in spirituality. And one of the things that I find with the women who I work with is that they're both sober curious and spiritually curious. And so I have a course coming up in October called Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting. That is typically only for women, but I do work with men privately in my one-on-one coaching. But mostly I would just love to connect with anyone who this message resonated with a lot or a little. I'm at Amanda Kuda on Instagram. You can find me there and DM me, lurk around, snoop around, whatever feels good for you. But I'm just here really to wake people up to their potential in this lifetime. And my path for doing that is elective sobriety. And if that is something that is even like tiny bit making you curious, I think it's something that it's worth checking out.
Yeah, that would be the key thing I would say as well. If you're in any way curious, just pursue that curiosity. Just consider what life could be like without alcohol. It's definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made to stop, but curious.
Yeah, no one I have ever met has ever regretted taking 90 days off or quitting altogether. So I think that there's nothing to lose. It's just a period of self-discovery, and I think it would be a great opportunity for anyone.